Hey there, it's Mark from Men Who Bullet. Thanks so much for checking out today's video where we're going to be doing a review as well as a pen test for the brand new Leuchtturm 1917 120 gram paper notebook. I have been looking forward to reviewing this notebook here because if you've ever had a Leuchtturm before, you know that the ghosting can be a little problematic, and it's something that has bothered me for a long time whenever I've used them previously. So seeing that they are upping their game with their paper, I'm really looking forward to see if we're getting the ghosting and bleeding that I've seen in past notebooks when we've used the 80 gram paper. Along with the notebook, we'll also be taking a look at this pen that I've had my eyeballs on for some time from Leuchtturm. This is the Drehgriffel. This is a really cool ballpoint pen, gel pen that also has little turnstile action coming, really cool design. So we'll be taking a look at this as well as the notebook and just trying out so many things inside of this notebook. I will let you know it's a little bit of a longer video. So what I've done is I've put timestamps in the descriptions below. So if you're interested in gel pens instead of brush pens, or you want to go and check out the paint versus the brush pen, I mean, it's all inside of here. So you can check those all out in the descriptions below. If you're checking out this video in July, which hopefully you are watching this immediately, you can use a special discount code that they gave me, which is going to be Mark10, and that's going to get you 10% off any regular priced item for the month of July over on the Leuchtturm 1917 website. So let's go ahead and get into our pen test. We're going to be checking out all kinds of good stuff, including the 120 gram Leuchtturm 1917. Let's go ahead and get started with this part of this. We are going to come back to the pen loop and the pen itself when we do our pen test inside of this notebook. This is a very special pen. I'm excited to have it, but I think the reason most will end up checking out this video is because of this notebook itself, because 120 gram paper isn't normally what you're going to find inside of most notebooks. There are some brands out there that have 120 or 160, and there's a reason for that. Having thicker paper means that it can take on more things. If you've ever had a regular Leuchtturm, not the 120, I actually have 3 of them. My very first bullet journal, the official bullet journal, the first version of it, and also another one that I had for my March through October of 2019. All of these have the 80 gram paper. And the biggest complaint that you're going to hear with this paper is that you do get a lot of ghosting. And this isn't just with this notebook. This is with any notebook that has that weight of paper. You see the lines that come through here. Now, this doesn't bother everyone. I'm very much aware that it only matters to some people. But if you are using thicker inks, you're using fountain pens or things like that, you want your paper to be able to hold up to that, regardless of the notebook. These are notebooks. These are not sketchbooks. These are not watercolor paper notebooks. And that really makes a difference, because if you're expecting to open up any of these notebooks and be able to paint and put down thick ink and all of those other things, you're going to be disappointed right off the bat. These are notebooks for writing. These are notebooks for sketching ideas. If you want to use heavier pens or ink, you should go over to the sketchbooks. So let's go ahead and talk about features of the Leuchtturm 1917 120 gram paper that you have here. So most upfront things that you're going to see through this are kind of all of the standards that you're going to get with most notebooks. You have the elastic band that you have here. We've got 2 bookmarks that are inside of here that you can use. If we pop open the back, we have the stickers in the back for labeling. You also have your paper pocket back here as well that you can store some things in as well. One of the many things that I like about the Leuchtturms, and especially getting started, are that the index already is included inside of these notebooks as well, and page numbers. Those are 2 things, especially with bullet journaling, that some people underestimate. They say, you know what, I don't need those or I don't want those. But if you are really following the bullet journal method, or you're using an index at all, it's sometimes nice to have those. Not that it's hard to create your own, but if you're just getting started, those are kind of 2 things that you don't want to have to always worry about. This is the A5 size here, and these do come in a few other sizes as well as different variants. You can get the dot graded that I have here. You can also get this in plain, and you can also get this in a ruled paper. Someone asked me the difference between this notebook here and the newer edition 2 of the bullet journal in the medium, the A5 hardcover as well. And the difference is that there isn't really a lot other than inside of the bullet journal notebook specific, that edition, you get some extra details about the bullet journal method in there. But this does have the 120 gram paper. Now, I don't have that notebook, so I can't do a side-by-side comparison of that, but you have to believe what's on the internet, right? Now, the descriptions of the notebooks are over on the Leuchtturm1917 website. That's just leuchtturm1917.us for the US version of that. And you can go over there and compare all of the different products that are there. On the back of the packaging, everything that you need to know: 120 gram paper, a smooth surface with low transparency. That's the whole reason behind this notebook. Really is focused on that low transparency, ghosting, as most people will call it, and no bleed through as well is what we'll be looking for as well with this. And it really makes it very versatile, right? Suited for fountain pens, brush pens, markers, all of those that we will be testing against this notebook today. I was also very excited because now you can personalize those notebooks if you want. They're really cool embossing here, and you can pick the different fonts that you like as well as what you want it to be. I had to do at Men Who Bullet, of course. This is my Men Who Bullet notebook now. I chose to go with the dot grid and the Nordic blue. There's also a black, there's a port red color, and also a sage green as well if you like some variations in your colors. Everything else as we open this up is going to be very similar to everything I just talked about. The index here is a little bit different than the previous indexes that I've used inside of these notebooks. I mean, this is going to look a little bit messy, but this is the official Bullet Journal Edition 1. This notebook had the index labeled for you already and just left these rectangles here for you to fill out. Inside of the Bullet Journal Edition here, this is the first edition. We had 4 pages of an index. Now, if we take a look at my first Leuchtturm that I got here, this is not the bullet journal one. This had 3 official pages of an index here inside of this one, and then I had to add 2 more here because I needed the index space. And with the bullet journal method, the index, it's the brain. That's how this whole thing functions, really. So I find that to be really important. So inside of this one, we have 1, 2. So we only have 2 pages of an index here. The design here is a little bit different. We still have the title here for contents. You have the page number, and then your topic or subject goes over on this side. But that's not a whole lot of space, especially if you're comparing it to the previous version that I just had out here. And then definitely a little bit different than what we had here with 4 of them inside of here. So I'd be curious on, I'd probably need to make more pages inside of here for my index. That's not a whole lot of index space for me personally. Everyone rolls with their bullet journal a bit differently. So I would probably take over at least these next 2-3 pages here to extend my index essentially. These pages are numbered. I think that page numbers are underrated. It's something that if you don't have them in your notebook and you're writing them in, that's okay. Even in my current notebook, I probably do about 20 to 25 pages at a time, just so that every single day I don't have to number those pages and go through. It's something simple, but definitely something that I like. So you've got those in the bottom corners of each of your pages as you're going through. I'm going to go ahead and flip to the back of this notebook because that's where I'm going to be doing my pen test. I don't want to do it in the front because if I'm going to start a new bullet journal, I like to be nice and fresh and clean. And I also like to have the pen test in the back here because if I'm using this notebook, I want to sometimes remember what pen worked best in here and what pen did not. And for the most part, I keep things pretty simple. Gel pen, notebook, but sometimes I like to get a little extra fancy in here and I like to use different pens and different brands and, sometimes use stamps and things like that. So let's go ahead and start this pen test. I'm going to go ahead and do it on this page here, and that way you can see a face-to-face here. I don't think that this paper quality is different than the other pages, but this is a little bit thicker than the other one. So I'm just going to go over a page here and use the last few for the pen test that we have. So what are we going to be pen testing? A handful of things. I have kind of my arsenal of tools that I like to do pen tests with in every single notebook that I use, because I like to think that these are some of the common and some of the more uncommon things that you're going to see or potentially use inside of your bullet journal. So let's check out what we're going to be putting this up against today. I'm going to pull out my Uniball Signo DX because this is the pen that I use almost all of the time. This is kind of my daily driver. I really like this one a lot. And if this pen can't work instead of this notebook, I would be a little bit upset, honestly. I am also going to pull out my Lamy here, which is a fountain pen. It says that it's friendly to fountain pen, so I'll be interested to see how well it does with that ink inside of there. I do have my Baronfig Squire pen here. This is a really nice rollerball pen. I love these as well. These write beautifully on paper. They do have a little bit of a thicker ink on them as well versus this one that I have here from Uniball. So I do want to see what these look like because I really love using these sometimes. Love my Liberty probably more than any of them all together. It's just a beautiful pen in the brass, and I like to pull this out every now and again and use it. So we'll be testing with this one here too as well. I've got a bunch of other gel pens here as well. This is from the Tool collection. We've got Uniball Unipin here, and I took out the biggest one I have, which is the 1.2. This is a big old thick boy. I've been using this one a lot actually, so I'd love to see what that looks like in here as well. I do have this Hobonichi brush pen that I got as a part of a collection. This is a little bit different than the other brush pen which I'm going to use, which is this Tombow here. Kind of a common one you'll see throughout. The tips of these are just very different. And as I've been using this one from the Hobonichi Techo, it definitely writes differently, so I just want to see what that looks like. Some other common things, I've just got my larger Tombow brush pens here. I want to see what those look like. We've got these from Dingbex as well. They're just a little bit different than the Tombow ones. They have a nice, real cool inky feel to them, so I'm going to be using those. We've got our mild liners here from a highlighter perspective. Also have my Faber-Castell highlighter here, which always works well, has a different type of feel to it than the mild liner, so I like to see what those look like. We've got one of the Uniball Signo gel pens here too. This is a Mr. Pen Black Multi-Liner. This is similar to a Micron pen or something along the lines of that. That's going to be in an 05, so not as thick as the 1.2, but still has a good amount of weight to it. We also have the Jelly Roll Moonlight. This is the darker gray that we have. We'll be trying that out. I know that Sharpies don't belong inside of notebooks. I know that, but I always like to use a Sharpie because I just like to see how the paper holds it all together. I do not expect it to hold up to this. I don't expect any notebook ever to hold up to this, but I just like to see how it does. Then if I move into a little bit more of the fancier things that we're also going to try, these are from Kelly Creates. These are the metallic brush pens that we have. I don't use all of them all the time, but sometimes I like to use some of the other colors. So I'll just try that, see what it looks like. I definitely want to try out ink inside of here, but I want to try it out from like a pointed pen instead of the Lamy pen that I have here. So we'll be trying that. I have to try stamps. I've been getting into stamps more and more as I've been bullet journaling. So I've got two different ones here. One that's more of an outline and then one that's a little bit thicker just to see how it handles the weight of that ink that I'll be putting on here. And the reason is that these handle a bit differently than these clear acrylic stamps. So I just want to see what that looks like. I'm also going to dip into a little bit of watercolor, not a lot. This isn't a watercolor notebook, even though it is thicker paper. I know the limits of certain notebooks with paper, so I'll use more pigment than water on this, but I just want to see how it does. And last but not least, we're also going to be pulling out this beautiful baby. This is the Leuchtturm 1917 Drehgriffel. This is a ballpoint pen with the gel insert inside of here. So we'll also be using this as a part of our overall pen test too, because I actually haven't written with this yet. While I've taken it out of the packaging and had a look at it, I haven't actually written with it just yet. So I'm excited to put pen to paper. We'll go ahead and start off our pen test with the Drehgriffel. I've been seeing this pen over on the Leuchtturm's Instagram page, and every time I see I just want. So I was so excited that when they reached out to me about checking out this notebook, that they also offered to send me one of these pens as well, which just made my heart so incredibly happy. I was so excited about it. So what makes this pen special? Well, the design is one of those first things. This comes in a bunch of different colors. You can also get gel inserts for these pens. So if you're really a big fan of using this, you can buy these separately. They come in blue, and I know black as well. I got blue just because I have a lot of black pens. The packaging is beautiful as well. I absolutely love the way that I'm just a big packaging design fan. If you haven't noticed from some of my other videos, I talk about it a lot, but it makes a really big difference. So this is in the stone blue color that we have here. On the front, it just says the name of the pen. And then we also have the Leuchtturm1917 hand, which means written by hand is thinking on paper. So once you open it up, you'll see that here. Thoughts grow into words, sentences, and pictures. Memories become stories. Ideas are transformed into projects. Notes inspire insight. We write and understand, learn, see, and think with the hand. And then also the website that is on here as well. Got a little paper on the inside. Let's get that out. That was a little bit harder than I wanted it to be. So once we open this up, you just get a little bit more detail about the pen itself. And we get the meaning behind the name. It's a German compound noun that directly translates as twist stylus. So that makes complete sense since this is a twist top ballpoint pen in a beautiful contrast color as we've got on the pen here. It reminds me honestly of a pencil, like a number 2 pencil. I almost got the yellow one, but I thought I had to go with the blue. I really wanted to match up some of my colors that I had going on here, so I didn't get that one. What I like to do is just write out the name of the pen or the marker that I'm using, so this is a fun one. We'll also just do like a darker mark on here just to see if I was coloring something in, and then also that. So it's a beautifully smooth pen. I'll tell you, the hexagon shape on this one does feel a little bit weird inside of my hands. I feel like I'm trying to find that grip on here, but it doesn't bother me too much. I really like the way the pen looks, honestly, and how it writes is beautiful as well. So I'll overlook that for myself personally, but it does kind of feel a little bit weird where some of these do land versus having a full cylinder for your pen shaft. So we flip that page over here. You can still see a little tiny bit of it on here, but it's very, very slight. It actually doesn't bother me at all. Let's do a comparison real quick of the paper here. This is the 80-pound paper from the Leuchtturm, not the 120 gram, and just see what that looks like in comparison. This is a really good comparison of seeing that 80-gram paper versus the 120-gram paper that we have here. So this has the ghosting, you can see almost right through it. This one, it's very, very slight. Definitely something that if you are used to writing in these types of notebooks that you wouldn't get as much of that. I could totally write over top of this and feel confident in being able to see my words, but if I was writing over top of this with something else, I feel like it would be very distracting. You don't come here for my handwriting, so I'm not super worried about my handwriting today. All right, so we've got that on there. So that one in the books, both writes nice, looks super cool. Let's go ahead and put this away. Again, because I like the packaging, I'll definitely be adding this to my shelf. So let's go ahead and write out some other gel pens. So for the gel pen section, I'm going to be using my Uniball Signo DX. We have the Jelly Roll, and then also the Tool gel pen as well. So I have to compare the Drehgriffel to the Uniball Signo just because I use this one all the time. This one is a super fine point. I know that it's 0.38, so it does have a little bit more of that kind of needle tip. But even in comparing these two, it's not that much bigger where I feel like I wouldn't use this pen, and it wrote a lot smoother, honestly. The Tool Metallic always is very smooth, love that. And then the Jelly Roll, it's like butter. So we've got all of those here. Let's go ahead and do our flip and take a look at all those. So those actually all do very well. It's actually hard to see many of them on here. I'm really impressed with this paper and how well it's handling the gel pens here. That's mostly what I feel like I personally use inside of my bullet journals, so it's great to see that they're not coming through. I did forget one of the gel pens. This is one of the Uniball Signo. This is the 0.7 of the Spectrum collection. Just a little bit thicker than the other ones, but I still wanted to get that one in there just to be fair to all of my gel pen friends. Let's go ahead and we'll check out in just a minute. We're going to use the Unipin Fineliner here. This is the 1.2. It's a big old thick boy. So I'm very interested to see what that looks like. And then we'll also be taking a look at a Fineliner. And let's go ahead and do 2 of the brush pens. All right, so we got a few of those in here. So we did the Uniball Spectrum Unipin 1.2. multi-pen. So this is similar to a Micron pen, for instance, if you are looking by brand. Then we have the Hobonichi brush pen and the Tombow as well. Flip those over, take a look, handling it like a pro. There's just such a big difference already with this paper. I'm actually really impressed. So let's start to go bigger and different now. So what I'm going to do is go with the Tombow brush pens. I'm also going to try out two of the different colors of the Dingbats Atta pens. And then we'll take a look at some more inkier options in just a moment. The reason that I wanted to use these Atta pens from Dingbats is that I do feel like they write very differently than something like the Tombows. The Tombows have a little bit more of like a light kind of texture to these, but these Atta pens are just like deep and they're very inky, I think is the best way to look at it. They lay different on the paper. So let's go ahead and see how these did on here. Holy crap, very surprised again. I don't know why I'm so surprised by this. I think just I've been so used to the Leuchtturm paper for so long that I just never thought that it was going to do as well as it is doing, and I'm grateful for that. I think it's awesome. Definitely listening to what customers are looking for, and that just handles these so incredibly well. I forgot to try out my Baronfig earlier with the gel pens. It's technically still a gel pen, but I'm going to go ahead and do the Baronfig, and then we'll also do the Lamy here with the ink. And then I'm also going to get a pointed pen and just try a little bit of more ink on these just to see how it does. Now, when I just put on this fountain pen ink, I did go a little bit harder. First, I wanted to see how it did taking heavier ink compared to the Lamy that I have here. It just comes out of it differently when you're going from a converter to a pen nib like this to when you're doing more of a pointed pen like this. Before I even flip the page, I'm going to make a bet. I'm just going to say that I think that the Lavender ink here is going to, I want to say it's only going to ghost more than the other ones, but like my gut is saying like, might it bleed through? We don't know. We'll see. If we get an up close look though, before we actually flip that dough, I do just want to take a moment and show that with that, it definitely has some feathering around the edges of that pointed pen on here. I did put that ink on really thick. While I can take fountain pens, I don't think it's really ready for like pointed pen and heavier ink there. The Lamy looks totally cool. A little itty bit of feathering, but barely anything at all. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right. We didn't get any bleed through onto the other page, but it's definitely coming in here a bit thicker. Completely expected. That's no ding against Leuchtturm in this case. It's not made for this type of ink and using it in that way, but it handled it really well. If I would have used this ink in any other notebook with thinner paper, there probably would have been a problem. We would have seen it come through on the other side. Let's do highlighters real quick. I feel like it's not a problem to do these honestly now, because if I see it taking on heavier multi-liners and fine liners, there is no reason whatsoever that a highlighter shouldn't do well. And I'm going like all out now because I'm like, I want to put this notebook to the test because I'm so impressed with how it's doing up front. To think that it wouldn't take on highlighters would be something else. So looking good, looking good. So let's go in with the last two things that I wanted to take a look at. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add a third thing to this. I'm going to take out the metallic brush pen. We're also going to be doing watercolor. And I'm actually going to add one of the Archer and Olive acrylograph pens. So this is more like a paint pen. I've been using this a lot. This is one of the 3mm, so it's the thicker one. And that's what we're going to end the pen test with. We'll start with the easy ones. We'll save the watercolor for last. So this is Kelly Creates metallic brush pen. Technically, probably should have used it up here, but I wanted to see how it looks. For the watercolor, I'm going to be using Peppercorn Arts from Mercury to Saturn. The reason I'm using this one is because, well, everything else is metallic, so I thought I'd keep it going with the watercolor too. So for this, I just tried two different ways. The first one here on the left, I went in with more pigment than water. And then over here on the right-hand side, I actually laid down the water first because I wanted to add more to the page to see how it handles it. And over here, just the one thing that never does well inside of any notebook, we're going to go ahead and put down one of the Sharpie permanent markers as well. Alrighty, let's see how we did. So over here where the watercolor is, a little bit of buckling, but honestly, this isn't a watercolor notebook. So that's expected. That happen in any type of notebook. And honestly, super impressed with the Sharpie on this paper. And you're like, Mark, I can see it. It's almost as bad as the actual ink. But I'll say this again. This looks like ghosting in the other notebooks. If I would have used that Sharpie pen in the other notebooks, it would have bled through the paper, totally would have went onto the other page. So even just seeing it like this is super impressive for this paper because Sharpie is like every journal's worst nightmare. So I'm impressed. I'm not gonna lie to you. I know I've said it a few times. This is my honest reaction. Oh wait, we haven't done stamps yet. Pen-wise, I'm very impressed. I totally expected, I don't know what I expected. I felt like it was going to react like that other notebook. I have to put it in my brain that 120 gram paper is different than 80 for a reason. And it did a great job here. So let's go ahead and just flip the page. Actually, you know what? No. Let's keep it on this page. I'll just use the extra spaces that we have here. So for this one, I'm going to use VersaFine Clear ink. Just kind of my common run-of-the-mill ink. Let's start off with one of my handmade stamps here. Anytime that I've used any of my handmade stamps, even in my Archer and Olive notebooks, which I've done before, you will get a little bit of ghosting. And that's just because the ink sits on this rubber differently than it does on the acrylic blocks. So we're going to press down nice and hard on that. So that is going to be the handmade one. And then I have two different ones here that I'm going to use. I'm going to use this outline of this dog. And then I'm going to use this arrow here that has thicker. It's just a thicker line on there versus the outline. Okay. Let's see what we got. Let's flip the page. So with that ink, it actually handled this thicker line very similarly here. I'm actually a little bit surprised that this one wasn't darker. So you have a little bit of ghosting here. Still not a problem at all. Considering it's a stamp inside of here with good thick ink on top of there, that handled really well. The outline you can see just a little bit. It's not a lot, honestly, but that just has to do with how much ink is actually on that stamp as you go through. Now I can tell you. So I don't know that I would necessarily recommend stamps inside of this one. Just thinking for myself, if I was using this and I was using a lot of stamps, I might be a little bit upset about that. For myself personally, if this does not bother you at all, by all means, this could be a great notebook for you. For the most standard type of items that people are using inside of their journals, gel pens, Fineliners, brush pens, even the Tombow pens, the Ada pens, all of those types, everything except actual like ink pen like that. Even a fountain pen from Lamy did very well inside of here. I think as long as you're not getting down thick globs of ink, you're okay. All the highlighters were good to go. Watercolor was even good to go. If you're using watercolor inside of your notebook and it's not an actual watercolor notebook, then this type of like buckling for the water doesn't bother you already. You're already used to that type of thing, but it handled both the very wet as well as more of the pigment a bit better. Again, we get a little bit of the buckling where it was more wet, but that's what this paper does. And even a Sharpie, something that in most notebooks just eats through that paper, still handled it well. It's the darkest of things on here other than the actual fountain ink that we used here, but it handled it well. So super impressed. The last thing that I'm going to do, because this is definitely going into a rotation, I am really, really excited and impressed by this notebook as a whole and how it handled everything there. I feel like we should make it official. So the one thing that the notebook doesn't have is a pen loop. I've had some different types of things throughout the years where I've put like loops or buckles or things over top of here to hold my pens. But Leuchtturm does sell a pen loop. You can pop this open. You're going to put this right inside the page in the back where your folder is. Oh, look at that. I'm like, how does it stick? So it has an adhesive back, and it just comes right off of here. So you know what? I'm going to put it down in the center. That way, depending on the type of pen that I have, in case it's taller, it'll kind of hold on there. So I'm just going to line that up here. We'll stick that down. Now we can close our notebook. We have our pen loop. And Manhu Bullet is good to go. It was so great seeing everything work so well inside of this notebook, and also being able to check out this pen. I'm totally putting this into my rotation. Just a cool design, writes so smoothly, and especially in the 120 gram paper. I mean, what can't you use in here now? All of the materials that we saw are just things I generally use anyway inside of my notebooks, and to know that they work well in here just makes me extra happy. Don't forget, you can use the discount code MARK10 and get 10% off all regularly priced items for the month of July over on the Leuchtturm website. If you haven't done so already, you can also sign up for my newsletter. I send out a lot of these details even before these videos come out over on my newsletter. You can sign up in the descriptions below. I have a link for you. I'm sending out freebies. I'm sending out just details on things that are going on inside of the bullet journal and planning community. You see it first content before videos or social media goes out or anything else. So make sure that you sign up for that. Again, link in the descriptions below. Really appreciate you checking out today's video, and I will talk to you very soon. Happy planning. See ya.